Let's begin. Welcome to the University of Tennessee Nuclear Engineering Department Colloquium Program. My name is Lee Dodds, and it's my privilege to introduce today's speaker, who is Ms. Lisa Stiles, Manager of State Initiatives, Grassroots, and Coalitions with the Nuclear Energy Institute in Washington, D.C. Lisa received a B.S. in Nuclear Engineering from the University of Missouri in Rolla in 1994. Come in. She then continued her education and received a Master of Science in Nuclear Engineering from MIT in 1997. While she was at MIT and for a year afterwards, she was an employee of the DNFSB. That's the Defense Nuclear Facility Safety Board. After her stint with DNFSB, she joined Dominion Generation as part of their spent fuel group. That's headquartered in Virginia. Then Dominion, more recently, Dominion has put her on loan to the Nuclear Energy Institute in Washington, D.C. She is the current president of the North American Young Generation for Nuclear, which is a big organization of young people. She's also a member of the International Youth Nuclear Conference, serving as their corporate relations chair. And she is, of course, a member of the American Nuclear Society and secretary of the Young Members Group of ANS. The topic of her presentation today is ProNuclear Activism, taking outreach to the front lines. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Lisa Stiles.
Thanks, Dr. Dodds, for that introduction. As you mentioned, I'm in Washington, D.C. right now. When I was sitting in your seats, the prospects for the nuclear industry weren't that great. In fact, I chose to specialize in waste management because I figured if we shut down every nuclear power plant the next day, I would still have a job. It's a lot different now. We are on the brink of something really great in this country for the nuclear revival. There's a lot of opportunities for all of us, for all of you. It's a fantastic place to be. So I want to talk a little bit about that, about how we can make that day come about. First, though, I'm going to give you a quiz. It's not graded, though, and Dr. Dodds, you cannot score. You can't turn around and look at what they're answering, all right? Okay. First one's easy. How many operating nuclear reactors are there in Tennessee? How many people say A? 2. Okay. B, 3. C, 4. D, 5. They're not answering. Is there 5? Well, I know of 4. I know of 2 at Sequoia, 1 at Watts Bar, and 1 at Oak Ridge. Well, I didn't say power. I said operating nuclear reactor. It's a trick question. Okay, next one might be a little harder. About how much of Tennessee's electricity is generated by nuclear? Okay, A. Any answers? Okay, B. 25%. C. 35%. D. 45%. The answer is B. About 25%. You get about 60% from coal. Okay. A couple more. About how many tons of nitrous oxide emissions are avoided by nuclear power in Tennessee? A. 15,000. B. 25,000. C. 35,000. Or D. 45,000. 45,000, which is equivalent to the emissions of about 2.6 million cars, and there are 2.8 million cars registered in Tennessee. Okay, how many tons of carbon dioxide emissions are avoided every year? 5 million? Anybody? 15 million? 25 million? Is anybody going to answer? 35 million. Okay, the answer is 25 million. 25 million tons. Okay, the point of these questions, these are the good news points we need to be making to our friends, our family, our communities. This is really good news. We are the knights in shining armor when it comes to energy in this country and actually around the world. One more question. What's the missing term? Okay. Don't tell Dr. Sulfanides, Dr. Dodds, that I had to go look this up and make sure that I got it right. My point here is when we are communicating nuclear issues, this isn't something we need to be talking about. If you are talking about it when you talk to your friends and neighbors, then we need to have a talk about communication skills. Okay. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about the licensing process because you probably haven't learned a whole lot about that, I don't think. Did they talk much about licensing? A little bit. Okay. I'm going to talk about what we did in Virginia, what's going to happen next, and what you all can do to be a part of it. Okay, the licensing process. Part 52, 10 CFR Part 52 is what the NRC uses to license power plants. I don't think I can talk over that, but I'm going to try. And it's changed, actually. Okay. Should I wait? I can do a little dance. Okay, that's a little better. The NRC changed this about 10 years ago, and now there's 3 steps. So there's design certification. You probably, maybe you do or you don't know, with 103 operating plants in the U.S., we have that many different designs. So design certification is aimed to have a standard design, makes things easier to build and license. There's the early site permit process where a company can go through qualifying a site for a power plant, but they don't necessarily have to use it at that time. They have 20 years. And then there's the combined construction and operating license, or the COL. Now, that's kind of hard to read, so I'll explain it. I wasn't around when we were last building, I wasn't in the industry when we were last building nuclear power plants, so if I get something wrong, maybe my more experienced colleagues can help me out. But you probably know that when we were building nuclear power plants in the 70s and the 80s, there were a lot of cost overruns, schedule overruns. There's a lot of reasons for that. But one of them is that the licensing process was horrible. A company would go in with about 10% of their design finished, they would get a construction license. Then they'd sink millions, sometimes billions of dollars into constructing the power plant. Then they had to go back and get their operating license. At that point, the NRC could change the requirements. There were a lot of public interveners, and so the cost overruns and schedule overruns were enormous. This process changes all that. The company goes and gets all its licensing done up front. It gets its design done, safety issues. The public still has the same opportunities to comment before any licenses are issued. So all of those issues are taken care of from the beginning. Once the company starts sinking its billions of dollars into building the power plant, they know they're going to be able to operate it. Now, there is a point here where you see ITAC, that the company has to prove to the NRC they built it the way it was designed, but at this point the NRC can't go changing things, said, no, you have to redesign this, we don't like it now. And this is what I was talking about. The result of this for utilities, and remember, utilities are in this to make money. They've learned that safe performance is efficient performance, but remember, they want to make money, so having high confidence in construction schedule and cost control is really important when you're sinking $1 billion or $2 into this. Okay, so in about 2000, well, it wasn't 2003, Dominion Generation, the company that I'm employed by, submitted an application for an early site permit. They were the first, I'd like to say, by a few hours. They beat the other group by a few hours, but they were the first to submit an application. At this time, this organization that calls themselves the People's Alliance for Clean Energy formed, a small group of anti-nuclear activists in Virginia. And they were really rounded up by some more well-known anti-nuclear groups like Public Citizen, Nuclear Information Resource Service, and the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League. And at this point, they filed a petition to intervene in the application, with the ESP application with the NRC. They got really well organized really quickly. These anti-nuclear groups have been doing this for a long time. I used to say they crawled out from under their rocks when Dominion submitted its application. It's probably not a very nice thing to say. But they got organized really quickly, and they got a lot of information, what I call propaganda, out to the public really quickly. This is a picture from a demonstration they had in Charlottesville, and I said, you know, that is a pretty good mock spent fuel transportation cap. I don't see what the big problem is, but they like to get that out there. Their campaign focused on security, economics, health effects, and environment. This is our friend the striped bass, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Okay, we got really shocked with the misinformation that these people were spreading. And here's some of my favorites. Lake Anna cannot physically support additional reactors, and the health of the lake is negatively affected by the existing reactors. Now, if you're not from Virginia, you don't know this, but Lake Anna didn't exist before the North Anna power plant. It was a dead river, and Dominion designed it to support 4 reactors. Current conditions at Lake Anna are a tenuous situation for the health of the striped bass population. That is true. They do have to stock striped bass, but that's because it's a great fishing lake. They stock it every year because the striped bass is not indigenous to that part of Virginia. There were no striped bass in that dead river before the plant was built. This always gets my operating friends riled up. They say these new inherently safe designs mean we're going to have less robust control rooms, and if an accident takes place, all the operators are going to run amok, go screaming out into the parking lot and leave everything unmanned, which is ludicrous. It's also ludicrous from a regulation standpoint because the NRC requires you to consider co-located facilities. It's spelled out in the regulations. It gets better. Nuclear power plants consume 2.9 billion gallons of water a day. My friend Joe sketched this cool little cartoon with the ever-expanding containment because we're consuming all of this water. More than once I've had to explain to people what a once-through cycle is. An NRC equals a nuclear rah-rah club. Now this one just gets me going. Now your students, I don't know, do any of you work with health physics department or anything, been experienced with an NRC audit? Okay, they are not our cheerleaders, all right? Before an NRC audit, I'm going, when I worked in spent fuel, going through my paperwork, every I is crossed, or every I is dotted, every T is crossed, because you document everything. When I was working for doing spent fuel fabrication oversight, I could tell you the heat lot of every bolt, every weld wire that was in that cast. Oh, this was great because this came from a professor of physics at UVA. The 240 kilograms of plutonium that was produced by nuclear power reactors every year is quite accessible, first of all, and extraction of weapons-grade plutonium from fuel is much like precipitating out a solid in a high school experiment. This is what he's telling people. I had to correct him. I said, you know, we really don't do that in high school. We wait till our junior, senior year in nuclear engineering, right? Right. Okay.
That was a UVA, University of Virginia physics professor?
Yeah, he calls himself a nuclear physics. He's actually subatomic particles, and he's actually, well, this is a webcast. I'll tell you about it later. He was thrown out of Jefferson Labs for a while, but anyway. Oh, this is good too. People at Dominion don't have to live near the power plants. They don't care about the effects of the locals. Yes, Dominion flies in their employees every day from another location, okay? Actually, this is easy to refute. We go to community meetings and say, excuse me, I live in a 10-mile emergency planning zone. But this is what they tell people. The radiation that comes from a nuclear power plant, they did admit, is a small fraction of a person's total dose, but it's a much worse kind of radiation. Oh, another one. We've been living in a police state since 1947. Yeah. So we can laugh at all of this among ourselves. But the thing is, this is what these people are telling our friends and neighbors and communities. If we're not out there giving the positive message, giving some sanity to this debate, this is what they hear. This is what people believe. When this is all you hear, this is what you start to believe. Okay, so we got frustrated. There's a group of us in Virginia that, with the local ANS section and the local NA-YGN section, for years have done science fairs, we've done informational events, we've talked to high school students about careers in nuclear science and technology, we've done science teachers workshops, that kind of thing. But this was something new to us. These anti-nuclear extremists were dominating the public debate, and we got frustrated. So we first began attending their informational meetings that they advertised. Now, at the beginning, our first goal was just to find out what they were doing, what their goals were, what they were saying, and then if we had the opportunity, we're never going to change the mind of extremists, but when local citizens are going there and listening to these things, we wanted the opportunity to kind of poach them off and give them some facts, gain some trust, and let them know that we were there to counter or to give them the other side of the story. But we did need to prepare. As I mentioned, PACE filed a petition to intervene, and they had 10 main points. We researched those to, in our own words, explain where they were wrong. We used publicly available information. This was important. Most of us were Dominion employees, not everybody. So we wanted to make sure we weren't using privileged information because we have friends that work in the new plant process and that type of thing. And also, we didn't want to be Dominion spokespeople. First of all, Dominion didn't want us to do that. And second, we wanted to make sure people knew that we were doing this because we're passionate about it and not because we're trying to save our jobs, which I'll get to in a minute. Avoiding tech speak. Sometimes that's hard for us engineers and scientists, and most of the people that were working on this were. But you really have to read and reread, have your friends read what you're writing to see if it really makes sense to the layperson. Staying positive. Sometimes you get in a posture of just defending, of saying, that's not true. Somebody says something, you say, you frame it in a negative way. So we really tried hard to frame things in a positive way. Didn't defend Dominion. Again, we weren't doing this as employees of Dominion. We were doing this as part of a professional organization. And staying on message. This is key because you can get off on tangents arguing with some of these people for days. So we came up with our message that we wanted to stick to. That's kind of hard to read, but the gist of it is we believe nuclear power is safe, clean, and reliable and an important part of a balanced energy mix. We try to drive that home anytime we are asked a question and we're talking clean, safe, reliable, clean, safe, reliable. This was important with my engineering friends that maybe don't always communicate well. Just drum it into their heads. Clean, safe, and reliable. Don't start talking about neutron diffusion and everything. Clean, safe, reliable. Okay. So we did this for a while. We learned a lot because this was new territory. Again, I don't represent Dominion. The extremists always tried to paint us as lackeys of the company, even though some of the group weren't even working for Dominion. But the people that really we wanted to reach, our friends and neighbors, I think they really bought the fact we were on our own time. We weren't being paid. Dominion has its own spokespeople. We're part of American Nuclear Society and North American Young Generation in Nuclear. And we really tried to emphasize the point that we weren't supporting nuclear because we work in the industry. We work in the industry because we support nuclear. Be prepared. It's important, we found, to listen. You saw some of the crazy things these people are saying, but there's also sometimes it's just a matter of twisting the facts. So we needed to know what they were saying so we could respond truthfully. Have a positive message and stick to it. Again, we don't always want to be on the defensive. We want to be on the offensive and tell the good story. Be respectful even if others aren't. This really became important because the anti-nuclear extremists would attack our integrity, would attack us personally, not physically, but verbally attack who we were, where we worked, what we do for a living. The other thing is that when you're confronted with people that are outright lying, you can't sit there and say in front of 20 people, you're a damned liar. You say, I would have to question the source of that information. By doing this, taking the high road and staying calm and keeping our composure and being respectful, we really did gain points with the people there that were open-minded. If you don't know the answer, don't make one up. This sounds elementary, but we engineers like to speculate. Somebody asks a question, we don't have the exact answer, but if we bounded it with these parameters, we could do this. You don't want to do that. If you don't know the answer, you say, I don't know, but I'll give you my card, or you give me yours, and I'll get back to you on it. Avoid tech speak as much as possible, like I said. This I learned, it was drummed into my head by some PR friends I have, Laura Herman at ANS and some other people at NAI. They may not always remember what you say. They remember how you made them feel. If you treat people with respect and you respect their intelligence and you don't talk down to them and you seem, she may be a nuclear engineer, but she seems pretty normal and she eats a lot of French fries, so, she can't be that bad with food at one of these things. So they remember how they make you feel. Don't speculate on Dominion's activities. This is specific to Dominion, but is applicable everywhere. We didn't want to try and say we knew what Dominion was doing or anything like that. We were advocating nuclear in general, particularly in Virginia. Going in groups is always better than going alone. Using personal experiences. Probably one of the times I personally was most effective, and all of us that were involved in this had the same type of thing. We all have different backgrounds. But at one point, they were talking about spent fuel management. And they're talking about North Anna has dry cask storage on site. And they were talking about, how do we know these things are safe? How do we know that there aren't imperfections in these wells where there's radiation streaming through and killing everybody? Hold on, wait a minute. I can tell you how we know that. I've spent hours crawling around casks and fabrication. I can tell you the boxes and boxes of radiographs we have of every confinement boundary weld. So yes, I can tell you there are no imperfections. And that, again, this wasn't privileged information like I was talking about. This was just experience that I had working in the industry. Had other people experience in operations and radiation protection, and so using those kinds of personal experiences can be really effective. We got help from the Nuclear Energy Institute and ANS because there's lots of information out there. We don't need to reinvent the wheel in trying to get information and try to answer some of these things. But we also want to use other sources too, because of course the extremists paint these as nothing but front organizations for the big bad corporations. I guess NEI is the front organization for the big bad corporations, but NEI does a lot of good things. As much as possible, like I said, I can't say it enough, frame statements positively, not in a defensive posture. And don't be afraid. You saw what some of these people are saying. They're not rocket scientists or brain surgeons or nuclear engineers. So it's not, we don't need to be afraid of these people. We can just give the facts and the truth, and it's going to make our arguments for us. Okay, so we'd gone to some of these meetings. We had stood up and talked. We had gotten on video camera when they offered it to us, that kind of thing. But the next big thing that was coming up was the NRC was holding a hearing. As part of the early site permit process, they have a few public hearings. One of them is for the environmental impact statement. We knew that the antis were organizing a demonstration, so we organized one of our own. We wanted to do a pro-nuclear rally before the hearing, and we did all the kind of grassroots things you see on the other side, but of course with our message. You can see some of the members of the very young generation, as you can see the picture, helping us with our signs, posters, stickers. We did this all on a budget of less than $500. But there was a group of us that were really committed to this. Circulated a petition at NRC hearings. If you ever want to go to one, call me. I'll tell you the ins and outs because there's some procedural issues, but we had to register to speak. By this time, when we started, there was about 4 of us that were really committed to this. Then it expanded to about 10 people that were really committed and passionate about doing this. And at first, our colleagues, some of our more experienced colleagues, were like, "Well, what you're doing is great, but you can't make a difference." You know, they lived through this, and so they really didn't think that we can make a difference. But as we started doing these things, getting a little bit of press and that type of thing, we got more and more support. So we did get our colleagues to register to speak and come and show their support. And it was successful. Here's a picture of some of our homemade signs. The anti-nuclear extremists were shocked that we had that kind of support, that we were willing to go out there and promote ourselves as pro-nuclear. We got some good press. The media couldn't miss us or our message. In fact, really, we made up about 1/3 of the crowd. We were still outnumbered about 2 to 1. However, if you watched or read the newspaper, if you watched the evening news in the local areas or read the newspapers, you would think we were about 50-50. So that was great. After the rally, we kept things going. We wrote op-eds and letters to the editor. We went to other local public hearings and began work on website FAQs. There was another bullet there. Well, anyway, this is a picture from the same type of hearing, but this was in Clinton, Illinois. Exelon submitted an early site permit application for their Clinton site. So as NA-YGN, we organized local support there and did the same type of thing. There it is. We also went down to Mississippi for the Grand Gulf hearing. And really, we changed the landscape. The local citizens are listening to us. We went to Board of Supervisors meetings, and now everywhere we went after that, people were thanking us for coming and providing a balanced view. The Board of Supervisors in, for instance, Louisa County is supportive of the plan. I mean, it's a great tax base. It's a good neighbor. They keep the roads. They're not spewing things into the air. But to have us there to counter the antis, when that's all they listen to, for one thing, it provides them good political cover, which working in Washington, I realize is a huge thing for politicians. But also just that they would have more facts and that it was a more balanced hearing or balanced meeting than they've had before. The media started carrying our message. This took a while. First few times we went out there, you read their articles, there was nothing there. But again, from the advice of Laura Herman, she told me that before you go to attend an event, call the reporters that are covering this. In the local newspapers, you can find that pretty easily. And start telling them, we're going to be there, this is what we're going to say, let us know if we have any questions. Then you get them there, hi, we're here, this is what we're going to say, let me know if you have any questions. And then when it's over, here I am, this is what I said, let me know if you have any questions. They finally got our message right. And of course, the best thing I think is the opposition has changed its tactics. They used to, there's a couple of sites and local newspapers that these groups would advertise their public meetings. They tell the time, the place, the library, whatever they're going to be. And we'd show up and we'd ask questions. We weren't disruptive, but when they opened up for question and answers, we'd ask questions. Sometimes it got a little confrontational. First, one of the things I started doing was that on these websites, they would say, we're going to have a meeting at this time in Charlottesville or wherever. Email us for more information. So we'd email from, say, our Yahoo accounts, not our Dominion accounts or whatever, ask for information. They'll say, so where do we know you from? Who are you with? Have you been to our meetings before? And who are you with? And that kind of thing. And the other thing, this is one of my favorites. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but this is an announcement. And at the bottom it says, this event is not a debate. It is open to people who sincerely want to find out about the dangers posed by the proposed new reactors. That was in response to us. Okay, why were we successful? As I mentioned, it started off with 4 of us really dedicated. It kind of expanded to 10, but it only took a few is what I'm trying to say. We really changed the landscape in Virginia as far as the debate on nuclear power, and it took just a few people that were passionate. Now, we did solicit the support of our colleagues at different times, like at the hearing, but it didn't take that many people. We were dedicated, we worked together, a bunch of type A people, sometimes we clashed, but we really kept our focus on the goal and what we wanted to do. Open communications among interested parties. NA-YGN is independent from Dominion. Dominion wants us to stay independent, we want to stay independent. It's crucial to our credibility. However, we did communicate with them, make sure that we weren't conflicting, making sure Dominion's basically being sued. Is that what the petition for intervention is? So we did have to know what kinds of things, since even if we weren't representing ourselves as employees of Dominion, we were employees of Dominion and we didn't want to get involved in that. So we kept the communication lines open but made it clear that Dominion would not dictate to the professional organizations what we were to say and not say. This is important. We weren't, well, I say we weren't the suits, and look how I'm dressed. But not being the corporate representative really helped our credibility. Not that I think there's anything wrong with Dominion or any other utilities representatives. However, the public just doesn't trust them. There was a recent survey. NEI does a lot of polls and things like that. But this was actually, I forget which contractor, but they polled and talked about who are the most effective spokespeople, whether it's for the industry or a company or whatever. Company spokespeople, company executives, PR people are near the bottom. Do you know who's at the top? Academics. You all. Those people tend to be most trusted by the public. And engineers and that type of technically oriented people are also very well trusted. So going out there, not in my suit, but in my regular clothes, whether we like it or not, being younger, we are viewed as less vested than the executives that have their entire lives and careers and life savings invested in the company. Integrity. Again, when we were talking to people, we were speaking from experience, we checked out our facts, we went beyond the call really to make sure everything we said was truthful, not shaded in meaning, not trying to bamboozle anybody. We can tell the truth if the argument is still we're still right. Nuclear industry is not perfect. I lost my train of thought. Nuclear industry isn't perfect. You can't dismiss 3 Mile Island. You can't dismiss Chernobyl. You can tell the truth, and we still come out ahead of anybody else. There's so much positive about the industry, and that's what we're trying to communicate. In the past 25 years, the things the nuclear industry has done have just been phenomenal. Again, respect. Again, we can't get too technical with people, but just explaining how a nuclear power plant works. People are intelligent enough to understand the basics. There's so much misinformation out there. I remember a few years ago in Virginia, Lake Anna, we had kind of a drought in Virginia. The lake level was dropping, and they were talking about perhaps having to reduce power because of the lake level and that type of thing. And I was talking to people, and someone's like, yeah, aren't you worried about the drought? I mean, if the lake level drops anymore, won't it uncover the fuel? I mean, and these are educated people. These are the kind of things that you can't look at somebody and say, man, are you an idiot? You just can't do that. So no. Let me explain to you how a power plant works. You show them it's just a fancy way to make steam. and they understand. So you respect people's intelligence and you respect their concerns. You don't want to dismiss anybody's concerns. They're real, but we can answer them. And again, why were we successful? We're passionate about what we do. We believe in nuclear power as part of an energy mix. We don't go out there and try to say it's the answer to everything, but it's part of a secure and balanced energy mix in this country. So what's next? Well, this is why I'm at NEI. One of the things I'm trying to do is coordinate among professional societies. I think the professional societies like ANS, NA-YGN, WIN, HPS are the best people to go out there and start talking because, again, they're professional societies. They're not necessarily the industry. They're industry representatives. But this is where, I think this is where we can talk to the public and have more credibility. Support local advocacy groups. There's already ANS sections. You have a student section, I'm sure, and every one of you are members, right? Or NA-YGN sections or WIN sections are already there. These are groups that should go out and start advocating. And this is one of the things that I want to do at NEI and NEI wants to do is start supporting these groups, whatever they need, whether it's training, materials, encouragement, kicking the butt, whatever they need to support going out there and talking to people. Share successes and lessons learned. This is one of the things we're coordinating among the societies and the groups is important because you don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. NAC's website, that's one of the things I'm doing. It's not live yet, but when it is, you will have the website. And this is where I want to put advocacy tools, get people signed up, and share those lessons learned and that type of thing. Enlist the support of our colleagues. As students, you see your colleagues every day, you talk to them. It's more of a social network, but when you're out in the industry, trying to get your friends and colleagues involved can be more difficult, but we're trying. Okay, what can you do? One of the most important things is to stay knowledgeable in current events. I know you're busy, however, the NEI blog is talks about every day the news and what's going on. You can put comments, that type of thing, so it's a good place to start as far as staying up to date. And I noticed that Dr. Dodds posts NEI Insight and everything up on the board. That's another good way. Sign petitions in support of new nuclear when you see them. And when the NX site is up and running, you will see them. Join an act when I have the website ready. Good advertisement, huh? Write letters to newspapers and start your own local campaign. You're all ready to go now, right? Okay. As I mentioned before, I think local professional organizations are a great way to get organized. If you already are organized, and this could just be sort of a new project. Research the media. That means seeing what's being written, find out what the anti-nuclear groups are saying or the environmentalists are saying. Find out the people who are writing the stories, because usually it's one or two people from a local newspaper that cover the topic. Make yourself known to them. Call them. Tell them your expertise or your organization and that type of thing. Research the opposition, what they're saying. Form responses. Before you go out and talk to people, you need to know what the other side is saying, and you need to form responses. And like I said, there's plenty of help out there from NEI, ANS. You can give me a call. If I don't know the answer, I will find it. We've got lots of resources at NEI. Just get out there and talk. Your friends, your neighbors, whoever. And again, share lessons learned. Okay. I'm done talking for a little while. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes, this presentation is now open for questions and comments. Anybody have a question or a comment?
Are there special sessions in ANS meetings about NA-YGN?
NA-YGN does tend to host different sessions at the ANS meetings. We're kind of, since the ANS Young Members Group has now been formed, they'll be doing more of that, but it's a ANS meeting. In November, I'm doing a session particularly on blogging, how you can, ProNuclear Activism and how blogging can be a help for that.
Why don't you mention WIN, but I'm not sure everybody...
Oh, Women in Nuclear.
Yeah. Tell them where their next meeting is. And
I don't know where the next meeting is.
I went to a WIN meeting last summer, and it was very informative. I learned a lot. I encourage people to go. It's free.
Yep.
It's free, and there are lots of guys, men, that are members of the organization.
There are male members of WIN, and there are plenty of people over the age of 35 that are members of NA-YGN. You just have to be under 36 or in the first 10 years of your career to vote. So you should all be. So that's na-ygn.org. You should join if you're not already a member, and WIN is win.org.
I see some of my colleagues smiling after. The reason I went was to recruit female graduate students. Okay. All right, now tell them about NA-YGN and where their next meeting is. I know you know that since you're the president.
Yes, the North American Young Generation in Nuclear. Like I said, it's young professionals. It's not a technical society. You should be a member of ANS or HPS or whatever. But we do have a professional development workshop every year. It's in May this year in San Francisco. The professional development skills we work on are the non-technical skills that everybody needs in the workplace. But we also do, our goals are professional development, public outreach, like what I'm talking about here, and also recruitment and retention. na-ygn.org.
Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments for Lisa today? Well, first of all, let's express our appreciation to her for her presentation. Let me remind everyone that we do have a reception downstairs, and everyone is invited, and there is food down there, and encourage you to come. Lisa will be down there to answer more questions one-on-one, and maybe to help you get started in your pro-nuclear, pro-activism, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.